Hey internet, it's your boy Writing Desk, and if there is anything that you know about me based on this channel, it is that I love Batman Beyond. It was my first and still is my only fandom, and it's something that I have been consistently obsessed with for about the last 20 years. And yes, Batman Beyond has been around for 20 years. Feel old yet? I sure do! Now, I have made a couple of videos criticizing the show on this channel, or more accurately, criticizing all of the media that came out after the show was made that kind of tried to continue the story. What really brings me back to the show is my deep love for it. And I realize that it has been over 2 years since I started this channel, but I've never really talked about what I actually love about the show itself. I've talked about the movie, I've talked about why other people don't like the show, but I've never really talked about the things that I like about it. So I am here today to give you a top 10 best Batman Beyond episodes list. And shout out to Filmatic Pictures for suggesting this video. I know that you suggested it 8 months ago, but I've been busy. I've been trying to get other stuff done. But here I am finally talking about my top 10 best Batman Beyond episodes. Now, before I start, I would like to clarify that this is a personal top 10s episode. That while I do think that these episodes feature particularly strong writing, I know that I may have my own biases that shape my tastes. Likewise, this is a top 10 list for me now in November 2019. If you had asked me 2 years ago when I had finished my review of this series what my top 10s would have been, I would have had a very different list. Likewise, if you had asked me when I was 10 years old what my top 10 list is, it would have been very different. The thing is that while this show is a static entity, it is not changing in itself. It's sort of been set in stone. The world around it, as well as myself, have changed, and episodes that landed better 20 years ago might not land so well now. Likewise, episodes that were sort of okay 20 years ago may have benefited a lot from what has happened in the past 20 years, which has given it additional context that makes it more interesting. Basically, what I am saying is that you are free to have your own top 10, and that's fine. I just want to talk about my personal favorite episodes. And this is my channel, so my opinion is the only one that matters here. Haha! Number 10, Season 3, Episode 9, Betrayal, written by Stan Berkowitz. So, Betrayal deals with the return of one of Terry's most personal rogues, that of Charlie Bigelow, aka Big Time. Charlie was a childhood friend of Terry's that wound up pulling him into gang activity and eventually wound up getting arrested for it. He gets released from prison and tries to suck Terry back into that lifestyle, but ultimately ends up a huge disfigured monster due to a fight with Batman that involved some industrial strength fertilizer. Betrayal is Charlie's second appearance, and it deals with the fallout of his relationship with Terry now that he has become a huge hulking monster, and the only option he has left for himself is a life of crime. He once again tries to drag Terry back into the life of crime, but Terry again rejects him. Terry then convinces Charlie that he will protect him and even use Bruce's resources to help find a cure for his disfigurement if he will just turn himself in. Of course, Charlie does not do that, instead using Terry to get rid of his enemies and then planning to kill Terry. This results in a huge fight between Big Time and Batman, wherein Terry both literally and figuratively lets him go, ending the episode by saying, "I outgrew him." What makes this episode so good? I'm honestly a sucker for superhero episodes that have the superhero dealing with things but not as a superhero. This isn't an episode about Terry tracking down clues or punching things. It's an episode about having to learn to deal with a toxic person in his life, and so he spends most of his time outside of the Batsuit just trying to deal with a personal relationship. It's also an episode that challenges Terry's worldview. Terry spends most of the series being very compassionate, always looking for the good in people. And a lot of the tension of the series is born from Terry and Bruce's opposing worldviews. Bruce is more of a determinist, whereas Terry believes more in the nature of free will and in redemption. And he has to believe this because he himself struggles with his own redemption. What's interesting about Betrayal, as opposed to, say, episodes like Meltdown, is that Terry has to admit that he can't save Charlie. And the series doesn't exactly prove him wrong. The thing is, Charlie is a piece of shit, and he's always been a piece of shit. As Max puts it, he was always a monster. Unlike a lot of the other villains in the series who become villains due to outside pressures, Charlie makes most of his decisions himself. Much like Terry's other major enemies, Shriek and Blight, Terry is technically responsible for turning Charlie into what he is now. But unlike Shriek and Blight, Charlie revels in being a monster. He didn't choose it, but he likes it. He wants to be a terrible person. And ultimately, the episode has a pretty effective and strong moral that while you can and should try to help people, some people are just so toxic that you have to cut them loose. Number 9, Season 2, Episode 7, Once Burned, written by Stan Berkowitz. Some of the best writing of the series happens when Terry is dealing with problems that cross over from his personal life into his Batman life, or vice versa. This episode sees the return of Melanie Walker, aka 10, who first appeared in Season 1. Melanie is a member of the Royal Flush Gang. She and Terry met by chance and had a very fast and passionate fling with major Romeo and Juliet vibes. But when it came to choosing between Terry and her family, she chose her family. So in her second appearance, Melanie comes back to Gotham and robs a shady high-stakes poker game called the Derby on her own. Melanie then tries to reconnect to Terry, but he's bitter about what happened and doesn't trust her. She explains that the Jokers have taken her family hostage, but she refuses Terry's help. Terry, as Batman, then tries to help Melanie, but is duped. She then finds out that her family staged the whole kidnapping as a way to test her loyalty. When Batman shows up, she is given the choice: stick with her family or side with Batman. She chooses neither, instead slipping away into the night. What makes this episode so good? The relationship between Terry and Melanie is fantastic. It's melodrama in the best of teen drama ways, and you want to see them together while at the same time thinking that Terry is a massive jackass for doing this to Dana. Also, Terry fucks. Terry McGinnis, certified Chad. Additionally, remember how I said that Betrayal is about choice? Once Burned takes that concept and turns it up a notch. On the one hand, it's about Melanie's choices. Terry tells her that she has a choice between her family and him, and that she has a choice now. On the one hand, it's about Melanie's choices. Terry reminds her that she made a choice between her family and him, and that now she's getting a chance to make that choice again. But all she's ever known is crime, and she's torn between love and family. Not even just doing the right thing, which is what Terry wants from her, but just figuring out which choice will make her happier in the long run. It's really a very selfish character, but in such a way that her selfishness is tragic, rather than just being a major character flaw. And in the end, her choice is to just not choose, which is ultimately worse than either because it leaves her alone. On the other hand, Terry has to make a choice, whether to wait for Melanie to get her act together or to give up on her. Max even calls him out on this, telling him that it's not fair to Dana that he keeps waffling like this. In the end, he makes his choice, and like in Betrayal, he chooses to cut her out of his life, even though it hurts. With both of these choices, he becomes more like Bruce, and while that can be a sign of maturity, it can also be a sign that being Batman forces you into a very black and white way of thinking about things. Just saying. Number 8, Season 2, Episode 9, The Egg Baby, written by Hilary J. Bader. Remember how I said that I like superhero episodes that deal with stuff outside of being a superhero? Well, The Egg Baby manages to bring Terry's personal life into his Batman life in a way that feels natural, relatable, and is also just a lot of fun. In this standalone episode, Terry grapples with crime fighting as well as parenthood? So the summary of the episode goes thus. An aging criminal named Ma Mayhem and her 2 sons are going around town stealing a very specific set of ruby jewelry, a set that holds sentimental value to Ma as it was the first thing that she and her husband ever stole together. Meanwhile, Terry is failing family studies class and he is desperate to bring up his grade. He's given a shot at academic redemption with a parenthood simulation project that is worth 50% of his grade. As with many sitcoms, he has to care for an egg for a week. The episode shows right away that he isn't very interested in parenting, so of course he gets paired with the self-absorbed popular girl Blade, who foists all responsibility onto him. This means that he has to take care of the egg while going around doing his Batman business. This is the only episode where I can then describe the rest of the plot as hijinks ensue. What makes the episode so good? This is the only episode out of the series that won the show an Emmy, and it was fully deserved. The episode is funny from start to finish with just joke after joke. As I said, it's got a sitcom feel. It's literally comedy derived from a situation. It forces Terry into a role that he is extremely uncomfortable with, and then makes him have to figure a way through it. This makes for a very strong, character-driven episode that still has a good amount of action. What's more, the comedy fits the tone of the series. It's dark and deadpan, instead of being out of place slapstick or lol random sort of stuff, which is not something that later DC animated shows really managed to pull off. Teen Titans! Sorry, I've got something caught in my throat, I guess. I don't really want to tell you too much more about the episode because it's just a fun ride from start to finish, and comedy always loses something in the retelling. That said, a big part of the comedy of the episode is the juxtaposition between Terry's bad parenting and Ma Mayhem's actual legitimate bad parenting. So if the subject of potentially abusive parents makes you uncomfortable, this is an episode that you might want to skip. Number 7, Season 2, Episode 25, Where's Terry? Written by Stan Berkowitz. Where's Terry is easily one of my favorite episodes. I mean, I like all of the episodes on this list, obviously, but I like them because of their high quality of writing, and there are episodes that are really written better than this one. Where's Terry has good writing, don't get me wrong, but where it really shines is in great character moments that had a very profound impact on me. This episode and Splicers have shaped my own creativity the most out of any Batman Beyond episodes, and Splicers only barely didn't make the cut for this list. In this episode, Terry spots Shriek's crony Ollie lurking around the subway and pursues him, but gets caught in a cave-in. From there, he meets a rebellious street urchin named Dak, who promises to get Terry out of the tunnels. But it's not because Dak likes Batman, it's because Dak hates Batman and wants him out. Meanwhile, Terry has been missing for 24 hours and Bruce and Max get worried. Bruce goes out to find Terry, and Max tags along, in spite of Bruce's insistence that she not. The episode is then split between two parallel narratives, all while Terry is being hunted by Shriek. And they are parallels. Terry and Bruce are both working with people that they would prefer not to be, who both talk a big game, but who are ultimately very vulnerable. Both of these partnerships force the Batman into dealing with a different point of view than their own, and it really lets their character development shine. What makes the episode so good? As I said, it's the character development. It's forcing characters to interact with people that they otherwise wouldn't, and seeing what they take from the experience, which shows the very stark difference in Terry and Bruce's personalities. For Terry, he's faced with a first, dealing with a child who not only hates Batman, but is on the path to becoming not only a criminal, but a villain. Dak explicitly wants to be Blight or Spellbinder or part of the Royal Flush because they are their own people, and they do what they want and don't take orders from others. This character is weirdly prophetic. I mean, just think about how many people want to be the Joker in real life. On Bruce's side, he has to deal with Max, who wants to be part of the Batman world, but whom he wants to keep out, likely due to his guilt about how badly he's messed up the kids that he has taken in. By the end, we see that Terry is empathetic, wanting to help people, even people who hate him. Meanwhile, Bruce continues to be a jerk to Max, even though she saved his life. Like Betrayal, this is an episode that challenges characters' worldviews, but this one has a more optimistic take, showing that kindness and understanding can go a very long way towards pulling someone back from the edge of radicalism. Also, Dak is just a great character. He's such a little asshole, and I have a major soft spot for him. 10 out of 10, great character. My only problem with him is that he should have had more appearances and he should have been Robin. Number 6, Season 1, Episode 7, Shriek, written by Stan Berkowitz. Another Shriek episode makes the list, this one being his first appearance. Shriek is an interesting villain. While he did ultimately make a choice, A lot of what happens to him is outside of his control, and he was punished with cruel irony. This means he's got a lot of the depth and conflict that some of the best Batman rogues of the past have had. In this episode, Derek Powers wants to tear down Gotham's historic district in order to put in an industrial complex. This is weirdly topical in a world where the planet is on fire because of a small group of capitalists. I guess millionaires never really change, huh? Bruce is adamantly opposed to this idea because it includes the theater where his parents were killed. Bruce calls for a stakeholder vote, so Powers wants to eliminate Bruce before that vote can take place. Meanwhile, Powers has been bankrolling a brilliant sound engineer, Walter Shreve, and reveals that there were strings attached to his deal, basically turning Walter into a hitman. When Walter fails to outright kill Bruce, he then uses a two-way radio to drive Bruce to madness. This results in Bruce being committed. Terry then has to do the detective work on his own in order to find out who this new rogue is and how to stop him. What makes this episode so good? First off, it is one of the more political episodes in the series, one that is highly critical of corporations and the destruction of culture in this pursuit of profits. It also shows how corporations take advantage of smaller creators. Plus, all of the focus on the past seems to be a way of the writers trying to assuage the fears of the Batman the Animated Series fanbase, basically saying, Beyond is not bulldozing the history of Batman, but instead giving it its due and just working on expanding on it. Second, this episode is perhaps the most stylistically brave out of any episodes of this series. Since the villain of the episode is a sound engineer, the episode plays heavily with its uses of sound. This is most obvious in the final battle, where portions of the fight are completely silent. A very brave choice, considering that people may have switched to the channel in the middle of the episode and worried that there was something wrong with their TV. But it also pops up in more subtle ways, like when the soundtrack goes from classic instrumentals as Bruce is exploring one of the old buildings in the historic district, to no soundtrack at all when the building starts to collapse, to then this abrupt and harsh electronica once Shriek appears on the scene. Composer Christopher Carter did a great job of composing this episode, and he honestly deserves a lot more credit for creating so much of the mood of the series as a whole. Also, I share a birthday with him. Just a fun fact for you. Additionally, when Walter loses his hearing, we hear a very high-pitched ringing that simulates tinnitus. This actually is something that will come up again in all of Shriek's subsequent appearances whenever he doesn't have a hearing aid in. Even voice is used to some extent, mostly by Will Friedle, the voice actor for Terry McGinnis. When he goes undercover as a slutty pizza boy, he uses a New York accent that he does not use throughout the rest of the series. And at the end of the episode, when he reminds Bruce that he is Batman now, not Bruce, he even uses a little bit of his gritty Batman voice. Finally, this episode just has some really great writing overall. Everything that happens in the climax of the episode was planted somewhere along the way. For instance, Terry saw a sound-canceling device while he was in Shriek's lab, and then in the final fight, Shriek cancels all sound. At the beginning of the episode, Shriek monologues about how sound is our first warning of danger, and in the final fight, Terry gets his ass kicked at first because he cannot hear where the danger is coming from. This episode does manage to edge out Where's Terry, which is Shriek's second episode, mostly because of its more creative use of sound and its more complete arc for its villain. They are both great episodes, though. Now, that is it for this first part of my top 10 list. I will be coming back in December with the last 5 episodes for this list. So if you want to see that episode, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so that you get notifications. If you like my content, please make sure to like and comment as well, because those really help me out with the algorithm. They help push my videos up and more people see them, and that just motivates me to make more of these. Hey folks, sorry for the sudden wardrobe change, but I was filming this video on the day that I'm also going to a convention, and I was literally about to walk out the door when I realized I forgot to say something, and that is a lot of people have asked me about my social media presence, which I kind of didn't have. I had a video explaining why I sort of had to shut everything down. But a lot of people have been asking, so I have brought it back. So if you want to find me on Twitter and Instagram, I am at RightEndDesk.
please feel free to go follow me. I talk on my Twitter about like the videos, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with the Instagram yet. But thank you. Bye.
Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.